Welcome to Spotlight on Jackson County. About the double whammy.
Job creation and education and health going.
A Tauntaun sleeping bag.
Yes, as we go, a lot of changes take place.
What about all this gridlock? And it's like,
Hello and welcome to Spotlight on Jackson County. Joining me in the studio here at WKFK tonight is Mr. Alan Williams. He is an independent and he is running for Jackson County Board of Supervisors District 5. Alan, it's so great to have you in the studio. Thank you for coming in. We had a little discussion before the show got started and it's great to get to know you a little bit. But
Thank you for having me.
Well, I'm glad you're here. I appreciate you being here. If there's somebody out there that don't know Alan Williams,
Right.
Give us a little background about, you lived in Jackson County all your life?
I'm a native Jackson County and born and raised in Van Cleve. Graduated high school there. Left Van Cleve after graduating high school, joined the Air Force, traveled around, been back and forth. Actually, was back at home in the Air National Guard and attended school at Mississippi Gulf Coast Community College for 2 years. Very proud member of a national championship football team there at Gulf Coast. Continued on my military service, really between active duty, National Guard, and Reserve for the next 25 years or so. Retiring in 2006 after another extended active duty tour. I spent 3 years as an instructor at Tuskegee University teaching Air Force ROTC. Then had an additional duty as a recruiter for the detachment while I was there. So when I finished my 3 years at Tuskegee, I actually came to ROTC headquarters and I was put in charge of the regional recruiting department, which means that I had 144 detachment recruiting officers that reported to me, in addition to about 19 other specially designated recruiters that were out there across the country in geographically separated areas that answered to me as well, all under the umbrella of Air Force officer recruiting.
Wow.
And after I retired, I actually had an opportunity and became a contractor, a program manager for an Air Force contract where we were out doing some diversity recruiting, looking for high school kids out there that were from a diverse background, male, female, ethnicity, that were interested in ROTC scholarships and becoming Air Force pilots. So we ran that program for about 2.5 years as well. And then really had the bug after being at Tuskegee, so I went and became an Air Force junior ROTC instructor, first in Alexandria, Louisiana at Bolton High School, and then lastly at Bay High School over in Bay St. Louis, and that got me back home here on the coast in 2011. Spent a couple of years working with Mississippi Gulf Coast Community College in their workforce development, actually out at Ingalls for a couple of years, and then now and most recently hired back as a recruiter. I am now the recruiter for Tulane University School of Continuing Studies here in Mississippi, both their Biloxi, Mississippi campus and Madison, Mississippi campus.
You travel around quite a bit. You're a busy guy.
You know, and I think that opportunity to have traveled gives me a broader perspective on a lot of things.
Yes.
And I think that will be an asset to me in the role as a supervisor.
Yes. We were talking before the show, and there's in the whole of Jackson County, there's one just question and discussion and talk and rumor and whatever, but it all centers around Single River Health System's
Absolutely.
retirement program.
Absolutely.
And the things that have been going on with that.
Right.
How do you feel about that? What do you think we should do about that?
Well, I think it's a travesty first and foremost, and I don't have the ultimate answer as to what can be done with that, but I know that those retirees were promised a benefit that they worked and earned and they absolutely deserve. So whatever it's going to take to make that right and to make that whole, those folks are entitled to it. The county is entitled to it because each one of those retirees could be any one of us throughout this county.
That's true.
And if you spend 20, 30 years working for an organization,
Yep.
and you do what you're expected to do on a daily basis to support that mission, and then at the end of the day, when it's time for you to reap your rewards, you're entitled to that reward. And those folks are absolutely entitled to that. And as we had discussed, I see that problem, though, as indicative of a larger problem. I think the pension situation really is a symptom of a greater disease that we have in Jackson County, and some folks would say the country, which I couldn't disagree. But we're talking about a failure of leadership on a couple of different levels.
Yes.
And we have to do a better job in selecting our leaders and then holding our leaders accountable. We've got to be as citizens, and I can, even as a candidate, I'm a citizen as well. So I have to be engaged. I have to attend meetings and pick up the phone and call our leadership and bug them, become that squeaky wheel if they don't respond, and hold them accountable and know that they're being watched. And then if they're still not serving the interest of the people, we have to take advantage of the electoral process and get folks into those offices that are going to do the public's will.
I have to say, being a recipient recently of a lot of services due to some health issues
Right.
that I'm having, the Singing River Health System is, and I'll say this right here, is still a great health
Absolutely.
facility.
Absolutely.
But the kind of cloud that's hanging over it needs to be solved.
Absolutely.
Because that's a very important institution here in our county, because we have a lot of business and industry
Absolutely.
whose employees
Absolutely.
are counting on that service, and future business and
Absolutely.
industry
Absolutely.
is going to look
Absolutely.
at several things
Absolutely.
before coming here.
Absolutely.
The health system, the education system, the recreation,
right.
and the housing.
That's
I mean,
right.
because that's what their employees are going to be coming into. So we have to maintain an excellent health system.
Absolutely.
If we don't, we might not be able to attract business and industry, which is the key to growth in this county.
Well, and I look at that, and you're spot on. You're absolutely right in that, and we have to look at things and realize that things don't just happen in a vacuum. The strength of our education system impacts the strength of our healthcare system, the recreation that we have available. There's all a synergistic effect to all of those, and we have to be mindful of those. And there's that saying out there, we're only as strong as our weakest link. And if our health care is perceived as a weak link, then the whole county, everything that we do is perceived as a weak link. We're losing some good folks from that healthcare system that we really can't afford to lose, because the healthcare system isn't about the brick and mortar buildings.
No.
It's about those people. It's about those nurses. It's about those doctors. It's about those janitorial folks, those laundry folks, all of the the billing and coding people, all of those that make up the entire hospital operation. As an Air Force guy, and I get asked a lot about being a pilot, and there's the perception that everybody in the Air Force is a pilot. Well, the reality is that there are more support people to support those pilots than there are pilots, and they're just as vital as the person that goes out and flies that mission. We have to maintain our excellent core of doctors and nurses, but then we can't lose sight of those support personnel that support those doctors and nurses that make the entire Singing River healthcare system. And again, a system isn't just one ingredient. It's a whole bunch of pieces and puzzles that works together to form that system to be as effective as Singing River healthcare system has been in Jackson County for as long as I can recall. And we absolutely have to maintain that, but it comes back to the leadership of the hospital and the leadership, those in a position to have oversight over that, or to have influence into the oversight over that, and everybody being mindful of the importance of it. I think Singing River Hospital System is maybe the second or third largest employer in the county. That's critical.
Absolutely.
We can't afford to lose jobs. We can't lose jobs. We need to, Ingalls and Chevron have to continue to be competitive and profitable out there. so does Singing River Hospital System, because if you look at the county as a whole, that industry is one cog in that chain of the Jackson County system. And if we are going to want to attract new businesses, we absolutely, because everything that we do is a competition.
Absolutely.
Other communities out there
Yes, sir.
have their own
Exactly.
systems, and they're competing for those residential developments. They're competing for those commercial enterprises to come into their towns. They're competing for those industry to establish a presence in their town. So if Jackson County doesn't do a better job of promoting itself and really staying organized and staying united, then ultimately we're going to lose.
Exactly. You're exactly right. That hospital is nothing but a building.
That's
That what makes it come alive
Are
are
those
the
people.
people who
Absolutely.
go there every day
Absolutely.
and provide excellent health care
Right.
for the patient.
Right. Absolutely.
And when somebody comes in to look at your county and you have an excellent healthcare system, you have. I think the education system in Jackson County is good. Sure, there's room for improvement
always.
anywhere you go,
Always.
but I think it's an excellent education system. We have some fine people working there
Right.
just as well. So that's it's a vital part of the entire picture for Jackson County.
That's right. And we need to, even the citizenry has to take sort of that holistic view of the county and realize that it's not a bunch of individual stovepipes. It is a system that everything feeds off of everything else. And perception is huge. And as an outside industry looking to come in, the perception that, there's mismanagement, lack of
Exactly.
oversight.
Exactly.
Do you really want to get involved in that type of environment?
No.
No.
No. So there needs to be a solution, and there needs to be positive press about
Absolutely.
what's going on.
Absolutely.
But Alan, I've always said that Ingalls Shipbuilding is not just a company.
Right.
Having had a father who worked there and for many years and provided a living for a family,
Yeah.
I feel like I have ownership.
Yeah. Yeah.
Being a patient at Singing River Health System, I feel like I have ownership.
Right.
And I think all of the citizens of Jackson County need to feel like they have ownership.
Absolutely.
But here's the problem. If we have people in leadership positions that, even if they're not trying to deceive anyone, and I don't really
Right.
think that they are, it's the perception
Right.
that
Right.
they may be hiding something.
Perception is reality oftentimes.
And when that happens, people tend not to trust them.
Yeah.
They tend not to trust the healthcare system. And when you don't have that trust in your industry, your healthcare system, in your
Right.
leadership,
Right.
you haven't got a cohesive community.
Right.
And unless you have that and everybody working together, we're not going to advance. We're not going to move forward.
And it goes back to that proactive approach to leadership. It's not hard to imagine that there's a lack of trust, a lack of faith in our county government, county leadership of the hospital and all like that. So the only way to rectify that is to make a conscious effort to embrace the community and include the community, open up to the community. There'd be a lot more faith and trust in our county leadership if folks felt like they were more open and honest with them, more accessible to them.
Well,
Communicated with them.
as we talked before the
Right.
show started, I'm a real proponent of town hall meetings.
Absolutely.
And you and I were talking, and I have never seen my district supervisor in my district. I've never. I mean, you and I were talking about, like, what if your county supervisor sees you out, if he's driving around in his district,
Right.
so he can get a better feel for what's
Absolutely.
going on.
Right.
I don't think you can sit in an office
Right.
and know what's going on. You have to see it. You
Well,
have to.
I relate it to my military service, and even like playing football at Gulf Coast. And there would be times you'd be on your way to class at Gulf Coast, and there were the coaches. You know, they were out there and they were visible, and you knew they were out there making sure you were doing what you needed to do because they were doing what they needed to do. You know, in the military, it was not uncommon to have those good commanders that showed up in the job site and saw exactly what was going on and engaged you to make sure you had what you needed to do to accomplish the mission. Because, you know, the military officers that I know and look up to and have been mentors to me recognize the fact that a leader's genuine responsibility is to provide those members that they're responsible for the tools to do the job, the tools and training to do the job. Our county leadership has a responsibility to the citizenry of Jackson County to provide them the opportunities and the environment to be successful in this county. And our citizens have to trust that our leaders are actually out there doing things in their best interest, in the citizens' best interest, as opposed to a perception that, you know, our leadership is out kind of self-promoting, doing things what's in their own personal best interest. But the only way to change that perception, we've got to change. We've got to change the type of people that we are electing to office, and we've got to change the way we are a bit docile about holding them accountable. And if they're not being accountable to us, our voting record in this county, as far as percentage of folks who turn out for the elections, it's horrible. It's sad. It is really sad. And then we wonder why we have situations like the pension program at Singing River Hospital that come up when, you know, we could take some of that blame as well because we haven't been proactive enough to hold our leaders accountable. And if that allowed them to kind of lapse into this mindset of the public serving them as opposed to the other way around, then that's shame on us.
I agree, but we have, in my opinion, the people feel like they've been ignored for so many years. They feel like, well, what good is it going to do? But I always get mad with people. If you didn't vote, no, I didn't vote. Well, then don't gripe about it.
Well, and I think the August primary becomes a classic example. And if there's a situation out there to give folks hope, look at the response and reaction that those retirees got going into that August primary season. And we still had less than 40% voter turnout, but there was so much energy out there about the election and quite frankly, the whole idea of voting out all of the incumbents on the Board of Supervisors, that gained a lot of traction. And there was some effect of that. It shouldn't have to get to that extreme. But if we had that same type of energy to go into every election, then it wouldn't be that extreme because our leaders would know that we have a duty to perform and our citizenry expects us to perform. I think things happen sometimes because there's an expectation of apathy. And it's like, well, if they're not gonna hold me accountable, then that temptation is going to be even greater, and I may be more susceptible to succumbing to it.
Yeah, I totally agree with that. Politicians have to get more engaged with their constituents. And to be honest with you, I haven't seen the councilman in the city that I live ever in my neighborhood.
Wow.
So what does that say? What does that say? It says, well, you can call and you can gripe and you can complain, but why do I have to do that? Well, if I am engaged in something, if I have a job that I'm doing and it requires that I go out and meet the people that I am supervising or that are working for me, I need to go see what they're doing. I need to see what they're doing in the field. I mean, if a county supervisor shows up in your driveway and says, "Hey, Mr. Mansell, how's things going?" Whoa.
Yeah.
You mean you actually came to see me?
Yeah.
That's how they feel.
Yeah. Yeah.
So,
And you're exactly right. And you know, we talked before the show, and I think that is reflective of what I call proactive leadership.
Yes.
You know, we as leaders have to be proactive about going to those that we represent before problems become problems.
Yes.
And not only that, as leaders, we shouldn't be expected to have all of the answers. We've got a lot of smart folks out there. And even just having different conversations with different folks in your district, in your county, along this coast, in this state, I think you'd be amazed at some of the new ideas and things that could help us as a county if we were more receptive to that.
Totally agree.
But you've got to go out there. You know, more and more we're becoming a closed society. We don't know our neighbors like we used to.
No.
And that's a statement of fact. But as leaders, we can't just sit back and take that reactive posture of, well, you know, if the fire alarm isn't going off, then everything must be okay. I see a bunch of smoke, but there's no fire alarm, so everything must be okay. We've got to be willing to step in there and see what's going on before there's a 5-alarm fire going.
You know, a lot of people that I've talked to say, well, it must be an election year because they're having a town hall meeting. Well, it must be an election year because I see my policy. So it just needs to be more of every day and every year instead of just election year.
And we have to, why don't? And, you know, I think, and like I said, in the past couple of weeks, I've had situations to sit around coffee tables and have conversations with small groups of folks, and I think that's very effective. And I think that's something that could become an expectation, not an exception. But again, it goes back to the mindset of the folks that we elect. And if we continue to elect folks that grow up with a mindset that this is all it's ever going to be, this is how business is done, business as usual. So, you know, someone who says, well, why don't you have these town hall meetings on a quarterly basis? Well, people aren't going to turn out. You know, we start rationalizing and we come up with any number of ideas as to why something won't happen, and we find ourselves not even trying because we decide it's not going to work in the first place as opposed to genuinely trying. And you look at the history of this nation, how many things maybe didn't work the first or second time, but over the course of trial and error, things worked. And we have to be more adamant about sticking to things, and especially from a leadership position. If we get 10 different families in 10 different meetings, you know, you've then got 100 different families. Because you don't have the same crowd showing up every night doesn't mean that you're still not addressing the needs of your citizenry. And you have to change that paradigm of, well, it's not going to matter. They don't know me. My vote doesn't count. And you really let the citizenry know that they do matter and they do count. And the best way we show anybody that they matter is we pay attention to them.
And I think if that happens, people are going to become more engaged.
Absolutely.
Because they're going to say, well, somebody's finally listening to me, and they're going to become more engaged in the process. And the more they become engaged in the process, and the more they tell people that they know,
right.
they're going to
That's
become
right.
engaged in the process. And that's the way problems are solved. Citizenry get involved in the
That's
process,
right.
but if
That's
they
right.
don't, that's not going to happen. But the politicians have to give us that chance.
Absolutely. And if they don't, exercise that right to vote that next time around and give somebody else an opportunity.
Exactly.
You know, I had a couple of different conversations, 2 different individuals I met yesterday, both in the 30-something generation, and male and female, and they both expressed the fact that they don't feel like they matter. They don't feel like they're engaged because, you know, politicians don't talk to them.
Just what I'm saying.
They just kind of write them off as they're disinterested, and in reality, they're not. But, you know, there's no cookie cutter approach to leadership, and how someone may need to communicate with years in my generation, that 30-something generation, that 20-something generation. We've got to be flexible enough in our approach to be able to get that message across all of those different demographic groups. You know, our seniors have concerns that our 20-year-olds may not have, But in the course of the next 40 years, those 20-something-year-olds are going to transition to that
Same
senior
thing.
group, and it doesn't stop.
Well, we're one more question. Well,
Yes.
I'll get another question here because we're kind of getting kind of short here on time. But another hot topic, if I
Right.
may use that, is the damming up of portions of the Pascagoula River in order to create a recreational lake. Now, the Pascagoula River is the last free flowing
Absolutely.
river in the 48 states of the United
Absolutely.
States. I personally, and this is just my opinion, and I'm not saying that it's your opinion by all means, but man, we got to leave that alone.
I absolutely agree. And as an outsider looking in, just like every other citizen, I just question what is the real value of that for Jackson County? I mean, how does that add to the mystique of Jackson County? You know, because there is a mystique to be part of that free-flowing river in this country of ours. And to be honest with you, there's not a whole bunch of things that we can put our fingers on that are positives as far as the impression of Mississippi out there. And for Mississippi and Jackson County, the Pascagoula River becomes one of those. But then, and even where that's concerned, it goes back to the fact that this has hit the recent news. But in peeling back that onion, there's the realization that that project has been under development for a few years now, and the average citizen hasn't heard anything about it. And it just continues to give that perception of backdoor deals going on that are going to benefit individuals, not the county. And that's a foul.
And it is not doing nothing but contributing to the deep distrust
Absolutely.
that keeps being fostered within
Absolutely.
the voters of Jackson County.
Absolutely.
And it's not necessarily that somebody is purposely doing that. And I'm not accusing anybody
Right. Right.
of purposely trying to deceive anybody. It's just they maybe need to change the process of notification and
Yeah.
just come out there and say, hey, this is being proposed. What do y'all think about
Absolutely.
it?
Absolutely.
And it could just be in its infancy, but still go ahead and
That's
say
right.
it.
That's right.
Just put it out there.
Give folks an opportunity in advance before things go too far. There's perception that things have gone along so far that, you know, it's been taken out of the hands of the citizens because the decision has already been made. That's wrong. That's a foul. But again, that becomes reflective of politics as usual
Yes.
in Jackson County, along the coast, in Mississippi, in this
Yeah,
country
and
of ours. It's that
and
perception
yes.
of politics as usual, to where folks sit on their dais and have this air of knowing better for the citizens without engaging the citizens to know for sure what the citizens want and what's in their best interest, and making decisions and doing these deals that the average citizen looks at and it's like, well, ultimately, you profit and I don't.
So, Alan, what kind of supervisor do you want to be? What's going to make you different than anybody else?
I want to be that visible guy, and I don't mean, you know, those camera reports and, you know, those media reports and those things like that. But, you know, and even before we met today, and my constituents can share with you that, you know, I've talked about the town hall meetings. You know, I tend to put myself in the position of those that I represent. And what I would like, I would love to have that supervisor that just happened to show up, you know, show up at a meeting. You know, if I'm having breakfast at one of our local eateries, well, there's my supervisor. And not only that, my supervisor takes the time to come around and say, in case you don't know, hey, I'm your supervisor, and, you know, how are you doing and what's going on with you? Can I join you? Let's talk. You know, I've been thinking about some things, and just the average citizen, you know, let's go out and engage the average person, not just a select few that we kind of already know are going to tell us what we want to hear. Let's be leaders enough to hear the positive aspect of things and get positive commentary, but let's go and talk to folks that maybe didn't vote for you, but you're still their representative, and let's go and talk to them, you know, because you don't have to like me for me to represent you. And I want to be, and some of my literature and all has talked about, I want to be that person out there that goes back and becomes that throwback to our leaders that were about us and the people.
Okay.
Not just, you know.
Well, Alan, we've run out of time.
Okay.
I hate that. I really do. But I really appreciate you coming in.
Sure, thank you.
Thank you so much. It was great talking to you today. It was great meeting you.
Well, I appreciate you
coming
having
in the studio.
me. Yes, sir.
Okay. And thank you for watching this very special edition of Spotlight on Jackson County. Don't forget to vote, because you are a citizen of the United States, and a lot of men have given all for you to be able to have that right. So we'll see you next time on another great show. So join us then. On November 10th, 2014, Kimberly Watts was murdered in her home in Long Beach, Mississippi. A loving mother and compassionate registered